Welcome to part 2 of the June edition of Historic Racing News. Coming up, we go behind the scenes with Sky F1's Rachel Brookes.
I mean, the interview pen that I stand in, that is controlled by Formula One. We have a position we have to stand in. We can't move from that position. And we have 2 questions per driver at the end of each session, which I think a lot of people don't realise. So when a driver comes to me, I literally have 2 questions to them, no matter what has happened.
And we'll have part 1 of our chat with the legendary Ross Brawn.
I think it's, I was master of none, I guess, in many ways, but I knew enough about every aspect to be able to both contribute and also recognise the people who had the skills to make it happen.
Welcome to Historic Racing News, where motorsport history lives on. Here is your host, Paul Tarsey.
Welcome to part 2 of the Historic Racing News radio show. This second part of the show is going to be every bit as action-packed as the first. Whilst here at Historic Racing News our main focus will always be on the heritage of our sport, I know that most of us follow, admittedly to a greater or lesser degree, modern-day Formula One. I'm therefore delighted to welcome an expert in that part of our sport. Rachel Brookes is part of the excellent Sky Formula One team, regularly seen interviewing drivers and other important Illuminati around the Formula One paddock. Rachel, welcome to Historic Racing News. You've been covering Formula One for a long time now, haven't you?
Yeah, very long time. This is my 15th season covering Formula One. So I watched it before that, but now this is my 15th season in the paddock.
And I mean, obviously, we'll come on to it a bit later, but I'm sure it's changed a huge amount in that time.
It has. It's changed enormously from the personnel that you see to the way we cover the sport and the fan base. It's all changed exponentially.
And yeah, I'm particularly interested in that because Formula One is more popular now than it's ever been. And everyone always says it's Drive to Survive that made the difference. And is that the case? There must be more to it than that.
I think ultimately you go back to when Liberty bought it from Bernie, because Liberty bought it as a commercial entity and looked at it and said, this could be so much bigger than it is. And they're the ones that started the ball rolling. So you look at Chase Carey when he was in charge, for example, and the view he had was this should be so much bigger, this sport, than it actually is right now. And so the vision they had is what brought in Netflix and that then brought in this incredible audience now that we have globally. So I think you have to trace it back originally to Liberty, because I don't think under Bernie Ecclestone we would ever have had Netflix in the paddock following people around. And so, yeah, I would give credit to Liberty from when they bought the sport, because there were times after they bought it where, we would have conversations about, are they going to stay? Are they going to sell? What do they want to do with it? And then you look at what they've done, and the teams themselves now are worth so much more than when Liberty bought it. It can only be a good thing what's happened to the sport.
And you can never take away from Bernie what he did for the sport, because it would be very much a marginalised sport if it wasn't for him. But I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. He was a bit of a dinosaur, wasn't he?
Bernie liked the exclusivity of the sport. And I understand that, and it definitely felt that way when we were there. And it does still feel exclusive, but it also feels a lot more accessible. And I think that's the difference now. Bernie was amazing for Formula One. Yeah. When you look at how it's really hard to describe for anyone who doesn't know the history, but it would be like somebody coming in and buying football. You just can't do it. You can't ever imagine it, can you? But Bernie sort of came in and bought Formula One and made it what it is. I don't know a better way to put it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's perhaps easy from this perspective to be saying, well, yeah, he was out of time, and as you say, that Drive to Survive would never have happened under Bernie, which it undoubtedly wouldn't have done. But when you think what it was before Bernie, BB, it really was a minimal sport, and that he brought it forward that much. But what we have now is a very, very different fan base, isn't it?
We do. I do believe still that we have the old fan base. I think the old fan base maybe aren't as vocal as the new fan base, so we don't get the full impression of how they feel or how much they're watching necessarily anymore, because the new fan base is so much more engaged with social media and letting people know on various platforms how they feel about the sport. But we do still have some of or a lot of the old fan base. But yes, we do have an enormous new fan base through the likes of Drive to Survive. And I love the fact that we go around the world now and people know that there's a Formula One race in town. When I started in this sport, you would arrive in a country and there would be no sign of it. No one would know. No one, the customs officer or whatever would ask you what you're doing there, and you'd say, oh, I'm here for the Formula One race. Well, what's that? You'd have to explain. I got to customs recently and I handed my passport over and the guy said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here for the Grand Prix. And he goes, oh, please don't talk about Aston Martin this weekend. I'm a Honda fan. And I was just like, wow, what a turnaround in the sport. He knows that much detail, whereas in the past they'd have asked me what F1 was. So, it's been an incredible change.
And there was that time back in the old days where the Caesars Palace Grand Prix, as it was, drew a smaller crowd than the local ostrich race that happened, and those were the days. It must be very different with the amount of interest in the United States, because that's a different world anyway, isn't it?
Hugely, hugely. When we had the first race announced in Texas, everyone was a little bit worried whether people would turn up, what the interest would be, what it would be like. And it was quiet. The fans did come, but it was a quiet weekend, I would say, that one. And also the racing on track wasn't brilliant that weekend, that first race we had there. But by the time we got to the second race in Texas, firstly, the racing was much better. Secondly, more fans turned up. And then to go to Miami, as I did at the last race, and to see so many fans there, to see the towns, the cities, driving around. Formula One was on posters, on billboards, it was mentioned. There are events all over Miami all weekend. And to think we have 3 races now in the US, I wouldn't have believed you if you told me that in 2012. I'd have said you're crazy. There is no way the Americans are going to take to F1, and there is no way there will be enough demand to have 3 races in the US. So that just shows you as well how far it's come in the US.
It does, and obviously, as you say, different people following it in a different way as well. The way that you and the team at Sky F1 present, has that changed?
Obviously, we've evolved as the sort of audience has evolved. But ultimately, we get viewing figures that tell you who switches on for practice, who switches on for qualifying, who switches on for a sprint qualifying, who switches on just for lights out, and who switches off at the checkered flag. So you get an idea. And I would say the hardcore fans haven't changed. They'll tune in for FP1. They will watch the F1 show. They'll watch Ted's Notebook. And the newer fans, while they originally just tuned in for the race, they are starting to spend more and more time with us, which is fantastic, because that's when they're hearing the analysis, that's where they're hearing the in-depth detail. And they want it, which is brilliant, because I love it when people come to the sport, but I love it when they want to know more and they want to be as passionate about it as we are.
And it's interesting that you should say all that, because I can remember as a child watching the Monaco Grand Prix on television, or should I say, in those days it was always called the Monaco Grand Prix. Go over to the Monaco Grand Prix, and that they would do that. They'd show the first 15-20 minutes, and then they'd say the 2:30 at Kempton Park is just about to start, so we're going over to the horse racing.
Wow.
And then you go and do 20 minutes of that, and then go back to the BBC coverage at Monaco, and people just wouldn't put up with that now, would they?
No, and I remember when I watched Formula One as a child, I would watch the race and I would watch the race start, and quite often we would go off in the middle of the race and come back towards the end. They'd show the whole race, but we would come back with, say, 10 laps to go. Either my dad or my brother would say, oh, it's 10 laps to go, and we'd all go back into the living room and sit around and watch it. And I think that's changed a lot as well now. It's more like a football match. People will watch from start to finish, and it's engaging everybody enough that they want to hear what the drivers say afterwards and hear the analysis, but that they also want to come in beforehand and hear what happened in qualifying and what's been said that day or what are the latest news stories. But it has changed a lot. Yeah, I mean, I never sat through a whole race as a child.
And I think watching sport generally has changed, hasn't it? That whether it's football or rugby or tennis or cricket, the pre and post race analysis and those kind of things is completely different from the way it used to be.
Absolutely. I mean, technology's helped that massively. Our SkyPad is a phenomenal tool. I love watching Ant do his analysis on the SkyPad. I could watch it all day. But also we have to remember that this new audience watch in a different way as well. So they might watch on their phones, or they might watch, clips here and there. And so when you asked me earlier about if our coverage has changed, absolutely, because we have to actually do some tailored content just for social media now. We're not just putting our content on TV. We're putting it online. We're putting it on Instagram. How long do videos need to be on Instagram? TikTok, how long do those videos need to be? If we put something on YouTube, it can be, more in depth and longer form. But we've had to adapt our coverage to allow for all those things. And our interviews as well. When we do an interview, we've got to think, can we get some content here for social media as well as for the show this weekend?
That's interesting that you should say that, because from an outsider's point of view, it seems that the output is very much controlled by F1, that you're sort of, I won't say herded into a corral, but close to it perhaps. Is that true?
So I think quite a few people don't realise that the actual feed of the race, so from the minute the lights go out until the checkered flag, we have no control over those pictures. No. Those pictures are from Formula One on what's called the world feed, or the world. It's the WIF. I never know what the I stood for, but it's the world feed. And that's what everybody gets around the world to watch the race on. And then your programming is either side of that. So that's the same for qualifying as well. Although sometimes in qualifying, you can come back to your pundits between sessions if you want. But they also, in terms of, the interview pen that I stand in, that is controlled by Formula One. We have a position we have to stand in. We can't move from that position. And we have 2 questions per driver at the end of each session, which I think a lot of people don't realise. So when a driver comes to me, I literally have 2 questions to them, no matter what has happened. And so sometimes it can sound a bit brusque that I will start with the difficult question and not try and soften them up first or anything. But I have no choice, because I need to hear their answer and I need to respond to what they tell me. So I think sometimes people don't understand that that's sort of they're the conditions we're working under. And after a sprint, it's 1 question. So sometimes I ask really long questions in the sprint because I need to get a few points across, and the drivers laugh at me because they're like, I know what you're doing. You're asking me 3 questions in one because you only allowed 1 question. I'm like, yeah, but you made the rules, because the drivers get involved in that as well. So,
do they?
Yeah, they've been petitioning for a while to speak less in the pen. And so it's even stricter this year than it's ever been, I think, in terms of how many questions we get to ask.
Now, over the years, and you said you've been doing this for quite a long time now, have the drivers changed their attitude to you as the media?
It's actually a really hard one to answer, because I feel like people of that age group have changed in general anyway in society. So the Kimi Räikkönens, the Sebastian Vettels, the Michael Schumachers, who I interviewed when I first started, grew up in a very different way anyway. I think, and Fernando Alonso is still sort of that old school way, whereas this generation have been so aware of social media, so aware of every word they say being taken in any context whatsoever with no comeback. Well, they do have a comeback now because they can use their own social media, but they are so used to the way their world will jump on anything they say that I think they're a lot more considered in their answers. Sometimes adrenaline gets the better of them and they say something that they later might go on and try and correct through their own channels or through the team's channels. But I think generally they are just much more aware of what they say and how it could come across. So have they changed? Their answers have changed, I would say, yes. They're still racers. They're still big kids, most of them. And they'll still get their elbows out and get in a scrap they probably shouldn't from time to time.
Famously, you had that conversation with Lewis Hamilton, where he just said, it is what it is, or I can't remember
Change the driver.
Yeah, and how difficult is that when you get those kind of responses?
I've got a great relationship, or I think I've got a great relationship with Lewis. I have so much respect for him. I also respect and love the fact that he wears his heart on his sleeve. Yeah. And some people think that's difficult or think it could be. I've had people say to me it comes across as rude, but because I know him, I never take it personally. I'm never insulted or upset by anything a driver says to me in the pen, ever, whether it's Lewis, whether it's any of the other drivers. I've had my run-ins with Max. I've never taken it personally. I've never been bothered by anything he said to me in the pen. But with Lewis, he is so emotional, and I would never want that to change. But on that day, I think sometimes people may forget, I'm a fan as well. Mm. And I'm a fan of this sport. I'm a fan of every single driver who is out there. And when I saw how he was in that pen that day, I just felt horrendous. And when he said that, I felt guilty that I'd been the one that he'd said it to. Because I have a relationship with him where I think he's very honest. I think he's pretty honest with everybody in that pen. But I think over the years, we've got to know each other quite well. And afterwards, he was behind me and I just said, look, I really hope this gets better. I'm sorry I had to ask those questions. And he said, no, I'm sorry, for the response. And I was like, don't ever apologise to me. I'm absolutely fine. There's no reason to apologise. And it was a 2-second little chat off camera. But I just, in that moment, I was a fan as well who just felt like, oh my God, this is the 7-time world champion here who is really struggling. Yeah. This is really hard to watch. It's
interesting, isn't it, that over the years there have been those people who have said it like it is. You immediately think of Michael Schumacher, and Lewis has grown into that person who says it like it is. You're not going to get the BS coming down the line that he's going to tell you the way he feels.
Yeah, I think that comes with age and confidence, doesn't it? I mean, as you get older, you feel more confident to be able to say what you actually think and not worry about being judged for it or worry so much about consequences. But I think at the end of the day, honesty is just the best policy all round. We know when someone says something that's, hiding the truth, or someone says, oh yeah, I had this problem. And I'm like, I know you didn't. I know this is the reason for it. I can't
Are you ever
say
tempted
that
to do that?
Sorry?
Are you ever tempted to say that's bullshit?
No, but I might suggest, oh, so it wasn't this then, sort of innocently. But at the end of the day, you keep relationships with teams by, all right, I didn't pick you up on that one, but I'm going to have to do this next time, or I'm going to do this. And it's a working relationship. It's like any business, or any client, customer-client kind of thing. That's what you have to do, isn't it, sometimes?
Indeed. And you've taken all of this experience and you've put it down together in what I have to tell you is an excellent book.
Oh, thank you.
And that I've thoroughly enjoyed reading it over breakfast for the last week, and that it's great. I think one of the things for the whole book is you make it very clear that this isn't just about the superstars. It is a team game, and from team principles all the way through. And I commend you for doing that because it is a team game. But do you get to talk to those people sort of further down the pecking order?
Not so much on camera. I mean, we try to a lot. I think the race engineers particularly have come into the fore in the last few years, the likes of Bono and GP, because they are so prominent in the output now in the race. When you hear them on the radio, you hear GP talking to Max and their relationship. You heard Lewis and Bono, and now Bono and Kimi, which has been a fantastic relationship. So those sorts of people we do. I think Hannah Schmitz has been fantastic for the sport because she's a woman in a role that is incredibly difficult but important. And I think being able to see people like her, Bernie joining our team. Bernie is phenomenal. The minute she said to me she was leaving Aston Martin, I said to our boss, we have to get her on the team. She's brilliant.
Really?
We need to get her on the team. I was at Will Buxton's wedding of all places when she told me. And I came back from the wedding and just said to my boss, we need to get Bernie in. She is phenomenal. And it would be fantastic to have a female with that kind of insight, an engineer who's been there, seen it, done it. She's won races. She's made those decisions. That would be incredible. And so it's proved. And I think those sorts of people are in the fore now. We do need to get further down the line. We need to talk to people like Ollie Shack is leaving Red Bull. He's been Max Verstappen's front end guy for years, but he was also Sebastian Vettel's front end guy for his 4 world titles. And he's a brilliant character. And there are people like that I would love to hear more from, because they know what it takes. I mean, Callum Nicholas is making a career for himself now, talking about what it's like to work in the sport. There are so many incredible people in that paddock who we should be talking to more. But the teams are quite protective still, I think. And they also want to, not just protective of secrets, they're protective of the people, because I think we've seen a lot of backlash and hate online in recent years. And the more they know the faces and the names, the more chance if something goes wrong, they could be targeted. And that's horrendous. So I understand it from the teams, but I also would like us to highlight some of those incredible people who you just don't see or hear from very often.
Yeah, and I know that you've suffered it on online as well, and I mean that's utterly and completely unacceptable when we're all just doing a job. But yes, I think the media generally have this ability to make stars of almost anybody, and that's an interesting one, isn't it? But yeah, I think your book does actually go through that. I mean, team principals have now become stars in their own right, haven't they?
Yeah, I think Gunther Steiner started that on Drive to Survive, didn't he, with his comments. I mean, Christian was always great for a soundbite as well whenever you interviewed him. But also, I feel that the team principals sometimes take on that role to take some attention away from the team, especially when they're having tough times. And I think they bear the brunt of it and go, okay, I'm going to front up to the cameras, because then they'll try to get to the team less, try to get the drivers less. They'll talk less about what's going on if I can go out there and say something and draw some attention away. So they're also being quite protective sometimes, I think.
How long did it take you to write the book? Was it something that you sort of blanked out a couple of months and did it, or did you have you been doing it for a year or something?
No, it was literally a few months. I was, because I actually like writing fiction. So I've written some fiction, which I was trying to sell. And that's when the publisher came to me and said, would you do a Formula One book, non-fiction, for the new audience? And I sort of said, wow, I'd never thought of it. And I said, well, this is what I'd want to do if I could do it. And I just laid out the chapters as they are in the book, funnily enough. I laid out the chapters I would do and how I would approach it. Never expected them to say yes. And they came back immediately and said yes. And I then thought, oh God, what have I done? And I literally agreed the contract in Australia last year. I was on a Zoom call in Australia. I don't know what time it was in Australia, but obviously to time with the UK. And that's where I agreed to it. And then I had to have it in by the 1st of September. So it was during the season, but I luckily had a few races off. I took a lot of holiday, and I basically, any spare second I had, I sat at my table and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. But it was much harder than I imagined it would be, because getting the interviews is very difficult, because the drivers, the teams, everybody wants to do their own thing now. They want their own media, they want their own stories. So persuading people to sit down with you now is much harder than it's ever been before. In fact, I mean, there's one person who said they're doing their own book, so they didn't want to talk to me. And I said, but this is completely different to what you're doing. Yeah. Yours is a story of your life. This is not. I just want your input on a couple of topics. So that was really difficult. And then even when you get the interviews, there's all the research as well to go into it, which takes forever. And then there's double checking. And then there's getting people to proofread it for you who know, for example, the technical chapter I did, on the loose rear pointy front, I had that read by somebody who's been in the sport for a very long time, just to make sure technically I'd worded it correctly, because some of it is so complicated these days. So they went through it all for me as well. So it's way more work than I thought it would be. It's so much easier. I can tell you now, fiction is just so easy compared to non-fiction.
Yeah, nobody can check that, can they?
Right.
But I mean, I think you've hit the ball in the middle of the bat, and I know you've done cricket as well. So that you've done that because it's not a book that talks down to people who know the sport.
Oh, good. Okay.
But it also educates people who don't know the sport, and I think you've hit it very, very well in that. So congratulations on that score.
Thank you. That's really kind, because it was a difficult place for me to find myself, and I didn't want to talk down to anyone who'd watched the sport for years and knew a lot of the stuff, I mean, there will obviously be people who read it who know what I'm talking about instantly and don't need the explanations, but hopefully the people who don't will understand more. And the ones who do, even, I've just made some analogies that hopefully will just keep them sailing through the chapter and make it easy to read. And I mean, my dad loved it. That's my biggest testament to it. My dad's been a racer and he's watched Formula One his whole life. And he said he still learned bits from it. So I was like, okay, cool. Hopefully I've hit it in the right spot.
Oh, well, if your dad likes it, that's fine. That's nothing else matters.
And you now as well. So I'm very happy.
No, that's good. And tell me, I'm not going to let you go without this.
Uh-oh.
Who's going to win the World Championship this year?
So my brother asked me this on Christmas Eve last year, and I said Kimi Antonelli.
Did you?
On Christmas Eve last year, yeah. Because we do family predictions, and so we wrote it down. So, I mean, I can prove it, but yeah, I said Kimi Antonelli last year. And the reason I said it was because everybody had heard the rumours that the Mercedes was going to be quick and that it was going to be the car ahead at the start of the season. That was no secret, you know, it was in the media everywhere. But I'd just seen something in Kimi in the way he picks himself up whenever anything goes wrong. But I thought, we already know he's quick. He's an incredibly fast learner, and he doesn't let mistakes sit with him. He gets over it really quickly, and I thought those are three characteristics that if that car is quick, could really see him shine next year. Now, listen, George obviously walked into the season thinking this is my year, we've got a great car, and this is my time to win the World Championship. I've seen Lando do it. It's my turn now. Yeah. And I do believe George will come back with a challenge, and I do expect George to be in the lead of the championship at some point, because I think there will be a couple of blips here and there for Kimi. But the two of them fighting it out till the end, I cannot wait. And I also think it's going to be 3 or 4 teams involved in the battle by the time we get to the summer break, as they all catch up development-wise.
And that's going to be fantastic. And
brilliant!
It's I've been in and around motorsport for long enough now that you know I can look back to seeing Ayrton Senna in Formula 3 with Martin Brundle, and I can remember all of those things, and Formula 3 actually covering a Formula 3 race at the Nürburgring where this chap called Michael Schumacher was winning everything, and I kind of get a feeling that we're seeing that with Kimi, but
there's some talent.
Yeah, it may be wrong. So tell us, where can we get the book? What's it called?
It is called F1 Racing Drive. I happen to have a copy right here.
Good, well done.
And you can get it at Amazon, Waterstones, all your usual bookstore places. If you do get it on Amazon, I'd love it if you left me a review, because I'd love to know what people think. You know, I'm completely open to feedback, always have been. And if you do buy it, thank you very much. It's Audible and it's on Kindle as well. So if you want to listen to it when you're in the car, you can do that. And yeah, just thank you to everyone for the support. It's been amazing, and it's very scary putting a book out there. So even when one person buys it, it's a thrill.
Well, thank you for that, Rachel. I really do appreciate your sparing time in your very busy schedule for that. That as we record this now, you'll be off to Canada very shortly, and that will be a great one. But I hope that you will come back and give us a thought on the Formula One season towards the end of the year, and we'd love to have you back. Yeah,
I'd love to. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you, Rachel Brookes. It's a joy to talk to you, and we'll talk to you again soon. There are lots of ways to keep up with historic racing news. Our podcast comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. The 2-hour show includes interviews with drivers and other personalities from years gone by, plus news of historic events like the Goodwood Revival and the Silverstone Festival. And Jim Roller keeps us up to speed on happenings stateside and looks at the activities both on and off the track in the USA.
And you can also follow us on HRN Chronicles. It's our version of a time machine. We have archive features, exclusive interviews, and behind-the-scenes stories going way back into the history of our glorious sport. Plus, we keep an eye on the latest classic and competition car auction news. It's a place where motorsport's history lives.
And don't forget our amazing Facebook page. With over 1 million views a month, it is one of the leading social media channels for the historic racing fan. We feature tales from years gone by, news from around the racing world, and we also take the opportunity to flesh out the stories we cover on our podcasts with photographs and yet more background information.
If you would like to find more editions of the Historic Racing News podcast, try searching Historic Racing News wherever you get your podcasts.
The YouTube channel is simply called HRN Chronicles.
And just search Facebook for the Historic Racing News page.
You're listening to Historic Racing News. Now back to your host, Paul Tarsey.
Back in March, we were invited to host a live stage presentation for a conversation with Ross Brawn. And we were invited by our good friends at the Goodwood Road Racing Club. And we're very grateful to them, first of all, for inviting us to be part of this special occasion, but also for allowing us to bring you the conversation now. It was a long chat, I'll tell you that, and it covered an awful lot of different things. So we've broken it in two, and we'll have the second part of the show next month. I thought long and hard about how we introduce our guest this afternoon. Is he a designer, aerodynamicist, technical director, team principal, deal maker, businessman, sporting administrator? I don't think probably any of those do him justice. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ross Brawn.
Good afternoon. You didn't include fishermen in that one, so that's another part of my CV.
Yes, I understand that you're a great fisherman. And, do you get a chance to do it much?
Yes, especially now, but I always manage to fit it in. It's one of those sort of settling things that help me manage the pressures of motorsport whilst I was actively involved. And so wherever I was in the world, I always tried to fit in a few days fishing.
When you look back, how do you think of yourself?
I think it's, I was master of none, I guess, in many ways, but I knew enough about every aspect to be able to both contribute and also recognize the people who had the skills to make it happen. So, I have enough. I did an engineering apprenticeship, an engineering education. So I could look at a drawing, I could look at a component, I could look at something that failed, and I could have, after a while, an opinion. But what was most important, I could judge who was good and who was talking bullshit. So, and that happened. I think that applied in all aspects. So engineering, racing, drivers. I didn't drive, but you get to know drivers obviously over time. And then, a lifetime in motor racing gives you a lot of appreciation of the solid people in motorsport and the chances. I was always interested in engineering, and my dad was involved with Firestone Motorsport. So I'd been taken around the paddocks. He and I used to race slot cars. I don't know if you remember. They're sort of a sophisticated scale extric, but we used to race them all over the country. In fact, I used to go into Europe and race them. And that was a passion. So sort of engineering competition was always something in my blood. And I'd finished my apprenticeship. I was at college, living in Reading with my parents, and I saw an advert in the Reading Evening Post for a machinist to work at Frank Williams Racing. And I went along speculatively and was interviewed by Patrick Head. And Patrick took me around the workshop, showing me components and basically asking, can you make this? And I would take him through how I would machine an upright or how I would do another component. And I left and I didn't hear anything for quite a long time, 6 weeks or more. Eventually I got a call saying, you've got the job. When I got there, I said, how come it took you so long? They said, well, the first choice came, didn't like it, left, and you were our second choice. So that's fate. I was there when we won our first Grand Prix. I was there when we won our first championship. So, it was a really, really exciting and wonderful time to be involved with Williams.
And you went from Williams to Haas, and obviously we're not talking about the modern day Haas team. It was Carl Haas, the American, would it be fair to say entrepreneur?
Yes, yeah, I mean, Carl was a deal maker, very passionate about motorsport. Had a very close connection with Lola. He was the importer in America for Lola. But he connected with a company called Beatrice, who seemed willing to put up the funding for a Formula One team. Teddy Mayer and Tyler Alexander had left McLaren at that stage. And between Carl, Teddy and Tyler, they formed the Lola Haas Beatrice Formula One team. And went there as part of a trio of 3 people. I did the aerodynamics and bodywork. John Baldwin did the chassis, and Neil Oatley, who's still at McLaren, did the overall car and general engineering management. So Neil was a good friend. And I was there for a couple of years, a very formative stage of my career, because it was the first time I was really had that level of responsibility for designing parts and composite parts, the wings, the bodywork, doing the aerodynamics. And it was towards the end of that period. It wasn't terribly successful, although we actually did quite a good car in the end. But towards the end of that period, the first and only time I ever worked with Adrian Newey, because Adrian joined us as an aerodynamicist. But it wasn't long after that Beatrice were bought out, leveraged buyout, and the new owners didn't want to do Formula One, so the whole thing closed down. I could see the way it was coming, and I jumped ship just towards the end and went to work for Arrows.
Jackie Oliver, who was running Arrows at that stage, was a mercurial character, shall we say?
Yeah, I think Jackie, I got on pretty well with Jackie. I mean, he was affectionately known as a Romford Rat. And he was a deal maker. You know, he was out there trying to do deals all the time, and he was trying to bring the money in, trying to make things happen. And in fairness, Jackie gave me my first real chance particularly in Formula One, because I was then responsible for the whole car. Interestingly, he tried to get Neil Oatley to do it. Neil took the McLaren job, but recommended me, because Jackie had never heard of me, so Jackie was pretty desperate, and so I got the job, which, considering my experience, to be given the whole responsibility for an engineering team and design a car, was quite a step for him. But so as I say, in many ways, I owe Jackie a great debt in having that faith in giving me that responsibility. And all round, it didn't turn out too badly. We did a car with the old BMW turbo engine, which scored points and started to get some results, and we had some podiums with it. So, considering where Arrows have been, that wasn't a bad result. But Jackie always ran out of money about halfway through the year. It was a very frustrating experience. We'd get going, we'd have a great program, the car would be good, and then it would stop, because unfortunately, Jackie just didn't have the funds, and then it was sort of survival mode for the rest of the season until the new deals came around in the winter. And after 3 years of that, it was getting a bit frustrating. So our 2 drivers were Eddie Cheever and Derek Warwick. They were driving a Jaguar sports car for a chap called Tom Walkinshaw, and Tom was very keen to get into Formula One. And we had a lot of discussion. But before that, we had to do a sports car, and that was my next challenge, the Jaguar sports car program.
So let me just get this clear. You went from working with Jackie through to working for Tom Walkinshaw, but
I was showing my true ability to deal with these people by then. Jackie had given me the training, and then I was able to apply it to Tom. So, honestly, I found both of them, for me, pretty straightforward for what I was doing as an engineer. They didn't make too many false promises. They left me alone to get on with what I needed to do. They'd give me a hard time occasionally if it wasn't going well. But actually, I got on pretty well with both of them until I chose to leave. And then it got very messy.
Right, and obviously with both of those people, or with both those teams, you were then moving into running a team of people that Up until then, you'd been part of a team, and now you were in charge of a team of people. Was that a difficult change to make?
Well, I had a great mentor, quite honestly, in Patrick Head. I mean, I obviously worked for Patrick for 7 years. I saw how he dealt with people, how he ran the team. He was always very composed and structured in the way he did things. He could get excited like all of us, but he never lost control. And he was my mentor, really, in many ways, in how to do it. And I tried to take that approach. Patrick was engineering, Frank was commercial. And they used to have a lot of banter between the two of them, but Frank used to come in the design office and say, look, let me look at the drawing. I just want to piss Patrick off. Let me have a look. And he'd start looking at one of the drawings, and immediately Patrick would come over, what are you doing in here? And it was fun. But you know, they knew their roles, and they knew they needed each other. And that's how I tried to operate when I had that responsibility. And that's why with Jackie and Tom, they took care of the political side, took care of the commercial side. I was very happy to focus on the engineering side.
Now, you say about the XJR 14, the Silk Jaguar, that was just so different from anything that had been running in Group C, particularly. At that time, we had cars like the Porsche 962 and the Sauber Mercedes, which were, I don't think it would be uncharitable to call them old school. They were traditional designs. You rolled out the XJR 14, which was just completely different. Did you just start with a blank sheet of paper, or how did you do it?
Well, I think that was the important thing. I did start with a blank sheet of paper. I mean, I think if you've been in Group C for a long time, you know, how you did something was sort of ingrained, you know. And whereas I came into Group C and I had no preconceptions about what a sports car should be. My only knowledge was a Formula 1 car, so how do I put bodywork onto a Formula 1 car? And what is there in the rules that mean I can make a better Formula 1 car than I could with the Formula 1 regulations? So the aerodynamics, the scope of the aerodynamics was massive, even though there were restrictions on certain things. The scope was huge. So, you know, the amount of downforce we generated with that car was exceptional. I have a terrible memory for corners, so you'll have to help me here, but the first corner after the pits, the old pits at Silverstone, the right-hander. Cops. So the first time, I think it was Derek went through there, we thought the throttle had stuck open because the engine didn't change. He went through it flat out. And we genuinely thought the throttle was stuck open because we'd never heard a car go through there flat out before. And he did it within a few laps of driving the car because racing drivers find their limits quite quickly. So it was a Formula 1 car with bodywork on. And of course that's how it then evolved. So it was a big step change in the nature of sports cars. And it would have qualified on the grid for the Formula 1 race that year if, even though it was 250 kilos heavier than the Formula 1 cars at the time. So it would have qualified 15th or 16th on the grid.
Which is amazing to think of in itself. And obviously it had the same engine effectively as the Benetton did in the back, badged as a Jaguar.
Yeah, it was a lovely little engine. Unfortunately, it wasn't suitable for Le Mans, which is, you know, we weren't able to race at Le Mans. We qualified, but we didn't race it. I was a big fan of Le Mans, and I was able to compete in two years of Le Mans while I was with Jaguar. First year we won with Tony Southgate's car. We did quite a lot of work on it in reality. There were quite a lot of reliability issues that we improved. John Piper, who was my transmission engineer, redesigned a lot of the gearbox because that was its Achilles heel. And we did a lot of tidying up of the car, but that won the first year I was there. The second year we were second to the Mazda. So I can actually sort of say I won Le Mans, which I'm quite proud of. But anyone who's done Le Mans knows what is a very special event, and I was very proud of that. So I really enjoyed my time in sports cars. And I guess I have to say that's probably the last car I designed myself, because thereafter it was teams. The engineering teams got bigger and bigger, and I became more of a technical director rather than a designer. And so that was the last time that I truly designed the car myself, obviously with a team around me. Although I then moved on to Benetton, which Rory Byrne was the chief designer.
But just as an aside, were you ever tempted to go back and recreate those sports car names, or was that just a tick in the box?
It wasn't a tick in the box in the sense I really enjoyed it, but I think that opportunity disappeared to do something very different. I mean, the thing that excited me was I looked at the cars that were racing, I looked at the regulations, and I thought, wow. Because in Formula One, you're constrained at every point. It's quite difficult to do something different. I mean, the XJR14 didn't really have a door. It had a window because the regulations said you have to have a door and you have to have a window. It doesn't say they can't be the same thing. And so we made it the same thing, and you had to get in and out of the car, rather like a NASCAR. You know how you see them, throwing their legs in and they get in through the window. With NASCAR, all doors, they don't have doors, so they just have that window. So our drivers had to learn how to get in and out of the car through the window. And then they said, well, if the car rolls over, it's going to be dangerous. I said, well, you show me a current car that rolls over that you can get out of, because the doors are so useless in the cars you have now. So every time they tried to stop us doing something, there was some logic, and so it was a fabulous time a fabulous opportunity that just doesn't exist now. So that was a real appeal.
Be sure to join us in July for lots more from Ross Brawn as he talks about his rise in Formula One from working with Benetton to Ferrari and ultimately winning the world title with his own team. You're listening to Historic Racing News, a copyrighted presentation of Historic Racing News in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited. Now it is time to see what's hot crossing the worldwide auction blocks. We go back to your host, Paul Tarsey.
Jim, I've been having a look round the auctions, and you've warned me to sit back and put my lid on. So, what have you got?
It's an interesting year because despite a world at war and other fragile economic forecasts that we see, the markets seem to be booming. At least they are here in the United States. And we're on a pace, Paul, believe it or not, to surpass last year's $2.5 billion in gross sales. We're halfway, we're almost 2/3 of the way through the second quarter, and we're already at $1.8 billion in gross sales. And that doesn't count private sales or sealed bid auctions where we can't find out what was paid and that sort of stuff. It has really been unbelievable, and we've still got a couple of heavy-duty events to come in this quarter, in the second quarter, and then we got all Monterey Car Week. So we could well be on pace to shatter the records that we set last year, and like I say, these figures cover all of America, all of the European auctions, and right down to even some small local auctions. Now, if they aren't reporting or they aren't, I literally use about 5 websites to try and compile all these numbers, and it's really, really looking to be an interesting year.
What are the highlights? What are the cars that have gone across the block?
remember a few years ago when Ferrari GTOs were all the rage, $40 million and that sort of stuff. Well, this year, the hot item seems to be another one from the Prancing Horse. Amid all the talk of statistics that show that buyers are getting younger and therefore their choices are getting younger, and it's really about newer models and the supercars. The current supercars are all just pulling down unbelievable amounts of money. But the it car from this year is a 1960s vintage Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase California Spider. There have been 4 of them sold this year.
Wow.
Now, there are only 55 of them produced. And 4 of them have been sold. R.M. Sotheby's set the benchmark for the model at $19.5 million. Now, that came at Monaco, the weekend of the Historic. And that was something. And that was on the heels of 2 very strong first quarter sales. RM in Paris sold a very similar car for $16.8 million. And then Gooding Christie's sold one at Amelia Island for $16.5 million. So Mecum at their Indianapolis auction, which is Kissimmee, we always talk about as their big, this year they did almost $450 million in gross sales. That's their big bell cow auction. But Indy, the spring Indy, is that, and what they do out in Monterey are probably their other 2 big auctions. Well, the California Spider they had this year at Indy was the last one ever produced. It was number 55 of 55.
Yeah.
And so of course, it was imported to the United States through Luigi Canetti. In February of 63, it was chassis 4137, and it sold for $18,150,000. And do you know why experts think that it didn't break the record? I was flabbergasted when I read this, and I read this in 2 different reports.
Why?
One was because the car was imported to the United States and it came in standard Ferrari red. All the other cars were black or had come from Europe or were sold in Europe, and experts said that because it was just standard red instead of an interesting color, it was it knocked the price down. Knocked the price down. Yeah, it almost broke the record.
Yes, it's hardly, they hardly gave it away. But
yes, exactly. Now, we are historic racing news, so I do follow the race car sales as well.
Good.
And currently, unofficially, again, this is me with a spreadsheet and scouring multiple websites. We're just under $100 million in gross sales in 2026 in race cars. Now, that's way down from a year ago, but remember that last year the Indy Museum sold over $110 million worth just in and of itself. So we kind of come back down to earth this year, but we're on par. We're on par with previous years. And normally the top sellers from the race cars come from the European-based firms and the European auctions. But this year, our friends at Mecum are stealing the show. And the first event of the year at Kissimmee, I talked about it a little while ago, part of that $450 million in sales was the only Ferrari GTO or the only Ferrari race car to ever leave the factory in white. And it was called Blanco Especial. That car sold for $38.5 million, and that's the leader in the clubhouse. I don't think anything is gonna beat that this year, unless something surprising comes across the block. Also in Florida, they sold a 1966 Ford GT40 Mark II. This was one of only 3 lightweights made. It was originally delivered to Alan Mann Racing, and it was raced at Le Mans, and the car sold for $12.375 million. So those are the two biggest. But Mecum, they do some fun stuff. And they sold a one-of-a-kind machine that kind of took me into the Twilight Zone.
Go on.
Imagine, if you will, Paul, a 1974 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow Superstock Dragster.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find a picture of this bad boy on our Facebook page. This thing has a huge blower on top of a 465 cubic inch V8 with a Mooneyham supercharger, a nitrous bottle that gives it a 200 horsepower boost of nitrous oxide. However, it should be noted that it does retain its original leather interior and its Rolls-Royce steering wheel and wood grain accents.
Oh,
Got that
brilliant.
right from the website.
Brilliant.
Sale price, $93,500 US.
Buy of the season. A buy of the
Buy
season.
of the season. Yep.
Well done. No. Thank you for bringing that. And I shall look forward to seeing the photos of that. And yes, we will put that up on Facebook in the next couple of days. But that's great. Interesting you should say about the California spiders, because I think one of the things that you and I have both commented on in the past is that so many collectors know each other, and that things go in fashion.
It's a small group.
By definition, and that it's interesting that things become fashionable, and obviously California spiders are the thing of May 2026. But hey.
Yes. And it's all relative. I can remember having a wonderful conversation at Amelia Island with Luigi Canetti Jr. when all the furor was going on about the GTOs, and he says, "I don't get it. Luigi has that, that New Jersey. I don't get it, Jim. We used to take those for lunch."
And it's true. I mean, you were saying about
one man's commuter car is another man's collector.
That you were saying about the 250 GTO that Mecum sold. That was an ex-John Coombs car, and you and I have many times driven on the Guildford bypass on the A3 and gone past the golf shop, as it now is, which was Coombs of Guildford's workshop, where that car would have lived. It's crazy, and it's now a golf shop, for goodness sake. Pah! I told you it was a packed show, and I'm afraid we've come to the end of it. We've covered a huge amount. Thank you too.
It goes way too fast.
It does. Thank you to Derek Daly and to Evero Publishing, plus Brooklands, for supplying a great place to hold an interview. A vote of thanks also to Rachel Brookes and, of course, to Nick Padmore. I'm hoping that Nick will be back at various points throughout the year to tell us about what he's been doing and what he's been driving. That for a man who's driven well over 50 different Formula One cars, I think he has a story or two to tell. I'm not going to give him that satisfaction. Talking of great interview venues, of course, a huge thank you to Goodwood and to Ross Brawn for that wonderful conversation that I had. I would like to thank my co-conspirator Jim Roller, who not only brings his own dulcet tones to the show, but also produces it as well. Paul Churd will be back next month. He's taken a month off. We'll all be back next month. Until then, my name is still Paul Tarsey, and if you have been, thank you very much for listening.
Be sure to check out our Le Mans special episode later this month on Radio Le Mans and wherever you get your podcasts. Then check out Historic Racing News in July. We'll have part 2 of our Ross Brawn interview and much, much more.